Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I'm an atheist and skeptic, and welcome to part 4 of my response to redeemed Zoomers' dismissive bullshit and pretense at annihilating all atheist arguments ever. We are finishing this crap up today, but we won't be pulling up the tent on this dung heap quite yet, because I have a few interesting comments that deserve a video, and I want to do a wrap up before this circus leaves town. If you missed the other videos, I have a handy playlist for this series if you want to wallow a while in this muck with me. You know, dear YouTubers, that I'm looking out for you. You're welcome. Before we get into the arguments, as always, let me repeat my stance. To me, atheism is a response to theistic claims. Without theists telling me I need to adopt their belief structure, I wouldn't feel the need to say anything. So these atheist arguments, as RZ calls them, only exist because theists, and in this case Christians, are making claims about their God and religion. And by the way, they're not all just atheist arguments. Some of them come from science or philosophy. But I digress. As in other parts, I'll be looking at why an atheist would be making these arguments, and I'll also address RZ's response to the points he raises. Alright, enough blibbity blab, let's put this turd in a bag and go home.
The story of Jesus was copied from the story of Horus or some other ancient character. Okay, dude, that's a Reddit atheist-level myth. Even atheist scholars know that that's silly. Faith.
I wonder if RZ went to look for the most inelegant, most radical version of these claims, showing a lack of charity with regard to the statements in question. By copied, you could take a couple of meanings. The first is the route RZ takes, that there is nothing original about the Jesus myth. It is a total copy of some other ancient character. There is a second, more modest claim that the authors of Jesus' story took elements from other myths. The first is false on its face, but the second has merits. Anyway, this claim only matters if you already want to accept that Jesus is God and you need the accounts to be accurate. Atheists might bring up Jesus' similarities to other deities in a context where a theist says Jesus must be God because he was the only human who did X, Y, or Z. There are lots of demigods in the ancient world, or humans who were made into gods, etc., who did some of these things. Then again, the atheist might be a mythicist, someone who thinks that Jesus was a legend, and I am not that. I don't care if Jesus existed or not. Happy to accept that he did. Anyway, there are similarities. Anybody interested can go look this stuff up. There's a whole wiki page on Jesus and comparative mythology, and scholars do in fact examine this area. Granted, there's no agreement, just like anything, so maybe we can just discard it. That's what RZ likes to do. By the way, it's not just mean old atheists who are interested in this claim. Scholars of ancient texts might study this as well. When I was a medievalist, I loved looking at how texts grew out of other texts, or inspired by other stories, how scribes added lines to other stories for their own reasons. Anyway, it's not a great argument. It only comes up when someone says Jesus is the only person who ever resurrected from the dead or some shit. That isn't even true in the Bible, since Lazarus also resurrected. I'm not an atheist because I discovered there were similarities in Jesus' story, and I don't know anyone who is. It really is just trying to prod the Christian into thinking about the gospel stories, like so many claims regarding the Bible. I would just say that RZ's flippant response once again shows a lack of curiosity and unwillingness to look at the claim more generously. We'll move on.
Faith is the opposite of logic and reason. No, it's not. Faith just means trust. Anytime you eat food, you're having faith that it's not poisoned, even if you can't scientifically prove it. If you're married, you have faith that your wife loves you, even if you can't scientifically prove that. And if you tried to scientifically prove it, she'd probably get very mad at you because it would mean you didn't trust her. Evolution.
It is interesting to me that RZ could just hand-wave away what is a whole area of philosophy discussed by theistic and non-theistic thinkers alike. Yeah, no biggie, nothing to see here, let me put some of that police no-entry tape around this and just go home. I will link this very long encyclopedia entry which traces different thoughts on the topic of faith from classical times to the present and references such unknowns like Plato and Aristotle, Aquinas and Augustine, Luther and Calvin, and so much more. Let's just look at the intro, which states that faith and reason are both sources of authority upon which beliefs can rest. Reason, generally, is understood as the principles for a methodological inquiry, whether intellectual, moral, aesthetic, or religious. Thus, it is not simply the rules of logical inference or the embodied wisdom of a tradition or authority. Some kind of algorithmic demonstrability is ordinarily presupposed. Faith, on the other hand, involves a stance toward some claim that is not, at least presently, demonstrable by reason. Thus, faith is a kind of attitude of trust or assent. As such, it is ordinarily understood to involve an act of will or commitment on the part of the believer. I won't read everything, obviously, we're just picking out some parts that are applicable to today's discussion, but let's jump down to another discussion about faith. Religious faith is of two kinds, evidence-sensitive and evidence-insensitive. And I couldn't have said this any better. In other words, you can have faith or trust for good reasons or for bad reasons. And the entry actually lays this out a little bit more clearly. The latter is more strictly an act of the will of the religious believer alone. I guess my point here in linking this article is, once again, it isn't always mean old atheists that discuss some of these issues. They aren't atheist-exclusive arguments. Now, why would an atheist bring up faith? Because theists often land on this claim when there aren't good reasons for belief. Usually after failing to provide adequate evidence to the atheist. They'll say something like, well, I just have faith, or you have to take a leap of faith. Basically, they have no good reason for belief, but they want to maintain it. Just watch episodes of The Atheist Experience with its tell us what you believe and why, and see how many people will say you just gotta have faith when you don't have a reason. Now, you can define this as trust, and our article on faith from the encyclopedia agrees, but again, you can trust for good or bad reasons, just as the article points out, evidence-sensitive or evidence-insensitive. So I trust my food is okay because we have food safety systems in place to make sure growers or packers or transporters or supermarkets or restaurants are all ensuring it is safe. Restaurants literally have inspections and certificates of safety posted. There are also guidelines for how to preserve and prepare food at home that I follow. But even with those, there are times when these systems fail and there's a safety recall because of E. coli or salmonella. So the trust is not 100%. I know there might be some risk. I'm using my past experience, though, to guide this trust. As for my spouse, what am I saying I trust my spouse to do? Is this just about cheating? I mean, we rely on their behavior to provide ongoing assurance that our trust is well placed. And guess what? People still do cheat. People can be unreliable. Have you ever met someone who trusted their spouse and that person cheated on them or stole money from them? I don't know why you specify scientific proof. Like, what do you even mean by that? We don't need to organize an experiment because I can observe my spouse's behavior. For the food, we do have scientific proof because, again, there are inspections and tests and all that kind of stuff. So what are you trusting when you equate trust with faith? What are you observing? What systems are in place that guide that trust? In summary and conclusion, trust can be misplaced. You might be wrong. Philosophers are less dismissive of this topic than RZ, and we're moving on.
Evolution proves God didn't create the world. Well, not necessarily. God often works through natural processes in the Bible, and for all of church history, there have been prominent Christian theologians who have had a more metaphorical interpretation of Genesis, even well over 1,000 years before Darwin existed.
So first, this is probably the clumsiest phrasing, and if someone is using this, they need to tweak their assertion. So, evolution usually comes up with creationist types because they need a literal genesis for their beliefs. So you can file this under 1, Christians need their Bible to be a perfectly true book, and or 2, God did a science, so done and done. Now, evolution is not about the formation of the earth at all. I would look to other sciences to learn about the accretion disk around the sun in which our earth formed. Evolution is merely an explanation for the variety of life we see on Earth today. So Genesis is wrong in how it portrays humans being formed by, as Aaron Ra says, a golem spell. Earth shaped into a person and inbreathed with life. It looks like RZ isn't a creationist, so cool. And it's true that lots of churches take an allegorical approach to books like Genesis. That's what I learned too as a Catholic, so we won't go over this too much more. Not a defeater for atheism. In fact, none of these so far has been. And in this case, sure, God could be a deistic God, or like the Greek gods. Really, it just defeats a literal interpretation of Genesis. Let's go on.
Christianity only spread because of military conquest. Well, eventually they did do military conquest, but for the first 300 years of Christianity, it was illegal, and it took over the Roman Empire despite that because of how popular it became.
Note that only is in the audio, but the speech bubble doesn't make the claim that it was the only way that Christianity was spread. I think atheists would only bring this up if Christians talk about how popular Christianity became as if popular means it was correct, or people had access to better information and those people back in the day were right. Note, it only spread through the Roman Empire when it became a state religion. Or, it also may just be scholars discussing the history of a religion, right? Again, not all these claims are made by snotty atheists looking for a fight. I will link an article that gives 5 reasons for the spread of Christianity, which includes the fact that people combined paganism and Christianity back in the day, but also that Constantine paved the way for Christianity to become the state religion. But then again, somebody making this claim might actually mean that the spread of Christianity was a part of the colonization of parts of the world, right? That would have been at gunpoint. I don't want to spend too much more time on this because it's not all that interesting to me. It has nothing to do with my beliefs. I'm not an atheist because of how Christianity spread. And anyway, RZ takes the yeah, but approach to this one. So let's go on to the next one.
Constantine invented what we now know of as Christianity. Again, Reddit atheist level myth. Atheists can do better than that. Listen to an actual scholar.
Gotta admit, I have never heard this claim ever, that Constantine invented modern Christianity. I didn't even know where it might come from. I mean, Constantine adopting Christianity is what really pushed the spread of the religion, but Christianity has always been morphing and changing according to whatever divine inspiration some religious figure has. And you could credit other religious figures in the past, like Martin Luther, with making giant changes in the church. Anyway, whatever Constantine did or didn't do is really meaningless in terms of the veracity of the claims of Christianity. Like, he was just a powerful dude with an army. Just out of curiosity, though, I was poking around on the old Google machine, and I found this about Theodosius the First. It's in a podcast, The Growth of Christianity in the Roman Empire. This person writes, after Constantine, emperors either tolerated or embraced Christianity, which continued to grow in popularity until in 380 AD, Emperor Theodosius I made it the official state religion of the Roman Empire. Theodosius's Edict of Thessalonica was designed as the final word on controversies within the early church. He, along with his joint rulers Gratian and Valentinian II, set in stone the ideas of the equal Holy Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Those foolish madmen who did not accept this new orthodoxy, as many Christians didn't, were to be punished as the emperor saw fit. The old pagan religions were now suppressed and sometimes persecuted. So maybe this Reddit myth stems from the wrong emperor. This Theodosius is actually the person that settled some early Christian ideas and the Trinity and so on. Not that it matters to me, I don't care, this isn't the reason that I'm an atheist. But I do find it funny that RZ is all about the biblical scholarship now, when back in his own point 9 about misquotes of Jesus, he just flat out rejected all the scholarship because they don't fully agree. And in his point 8, he thought anonymous meant anonymous because church tradition says Ignatius knew John. Never mind that actual scholars agree that the Gospels are in fact anonymous. But here, now with this claim, atheists, please listen to some biblical scholars. That is priceless. Let's go on.
If Christianity is true, why are there so many denominations of it? Well, yeah, there are a lot of denominations, but the things they agree on are a lot more significant than the things they disagree on.
I often do bring up this objection to religions, but especially to Christianity, because I wonder how a perfect God can't inspire a unified idea that everyone agrees on. And it looks again to me like RZ is completely uninterested in the implications of this idea. Just hand wave away, we agree on more. Yeah, sure, you have a lot in common, otherwise we would have called you a different religion. That's why Judaism and Christianity split off, for example. They both share a God and a set of religious texts, but they aren't the same religion because they don't share all their beliefs. But Christianity has pretty much been in schism since the start, with crusades like the Albigensian Crusade I brought up in video 1 for weeding out people who don't toe the line. And here is my problem. If you have an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving God who wants you to find him, who wants a relationship with you, who wants you to join him in his happy-slappy afterlife place, why are there deep disagreements about how to get there? There are disagreements on what hell is and why people go there. There are disagreements on how obvious God is. There are disagreements on whether you get to heaven through faith or works. There are even disagreements on when and how to baptize. So sure, you all agree that Jesus died on a cross for our sins. There are even disagreements on his nature. Is he fully God? Is he a prophet? Is there really a Trinity? I mean, there are Unitarians. So tell me, why can't the tri-omni God create a religion with a unified belief structure? Why do apologists even exist? Shouldn't God's message just be obvious to anyone who picks up the book? I'm sure an apologetics exists about why apologists exist, and that is just sad. Let's go on.
Disagree on. There's no evidence for Jesus outside the Bible. Well, that's not true. There's the ancient Jewish historian Josephus who wrote about Jesus, and he's one of the reasons why even secular scholars know Jesus historically existed.
I would actually add the word contemporary to this argument. There is no evidence contemporary with Jesus outside the Bible. But first, why talk about this? An atheist bringing this up likely is alluding to the fact that stories are not enough to accept miraculous claims, especially claims to be a deity. There are, in fact, lots of religious texts out there making claims about gods. Why should we accept this one and reject others? On what epistemological basis? I mean, I don't care if Jesus existed or not. I am fine accepting some itinerant preacher wandering around the near Middle East telling stories. I would dismiss the miracle claims. Now, the Josephus passage in question is an example of poor evidence. Josephus didn't meet Jesus. Josephus was born in 37 CE, so after the presumed life of Jesus. The Antiquities itself was published in 93 or 4 CE, and if the passages in question are his own words, and that fact is in dispute in the scholarship, remember RZ, we care about the scholarship. LOL, right, we do. Anyway, if these are his words, Josephus is reporting what Christians told him, and there is no doubt that Christians existed. And let's note that Josephus himself didn't seem all that convinced of the miraculous nature of Jesus, so much for the obvious persuasiveness of all the Jesus stuff in the first century. I would just say that pointing to one text like Josephus's produced half a century after the death of Jesus is not some great external evidence. What I think people are looking for is something from the time of Jesus. The Romans of this time kept great records, so we should find something more than a few lines from a Roman historian much later. The Romans conducted censuses, for example. There might be lines in an official report about this extra special preacher walking around Judea, that kind of thing. So we have some stories by people invested in writing these things down and having people buy them. We have the Gospels, we have Acts, written after Jesus' death, and this. Paul didn't meet Jesus either, so his letters are not great evidence for a living Jesus, just evidence that Paul believed. Yeah, so F- for all this. Thanks for trying. Let's finish this up.
You really think God made billions of galaxies with billions of stars in each of them just to have a personal relationship with you? Yes.
Narcissism, thy name is redeemed Zoomer. By the way, this final image of RZ's video, is this meant to make us think that the atheist was convinced by the Chad in this 10 minutes of Drek? Ugh. And we end on a question! Not really an argument or a claim, just a question. Granted, the implication is clear, a giant universe we can't inhabit. Heck, we can't live on most of our planet without adaptations like clothes, heating, cooling, boats, etc. Why would an intelligent creator be so wasteful? Why would this be the plan of the tri-omni God of Christianity? How does it make sense, except as a sort of wish fulfillment from back in point number 27 in the last video, that all this waste is just because of you? Anyway, my point of view, this is just more lack of curiosity about what the claim means and a lack of interest in knowing if RZ's beliefs are true. Just dismiss it. And to me, this last response just sums up the whole exercise, a desire to confirm your beliefs through cherry picking. In many cases, I see an ad hoc approach to RZ, common to conspiracy theorists. Just answer the question in front of you without regard for how it interacts with other beliefs in your system. The point is to swat away the question in front of you, not construct a coherent belief system. And as we went through, we found lots of questions, not arguments or claims, unless you literally mean that the person doesn't agree with you, so they're arguing with you. And we found lots of arguments that are not unique to atheists. They are discussions in philosophy and religion, in science, in psychology. Nearly all of these aren't defeaters to the concept of God anyway, just certain versions of Christianity or the Christian God. My main argument for why I'm an atheist is I don't see any evidence for any God whatsoever. And when I've examined evidence provided by believers, it falls short. And this video fell way short. I don't know, how would we grade this video? Would this be an F? Let me know. What did you make of this last set of arguments and RZ's non-sponsors? Put them in the comments below. I love to read your comments, and while you're down there, you can do all the YouTube stuff, liking, subscribing, all that stuff. You know what to do. You're on YouTube, and if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. That link is also in the description below, and I will be back maybe with a comments video and some kitty pics. I haven't done that in a while, and I know you guys are jonesing for some kitty pics. Kitty, K-I-T-T-Y. Been criticized for saying kitty the wrong way, and I'm sorry about that, but they're cats, okay? They're cats. They're cat pictures. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.